Okay, hey there, it's Mark again. I'm here to demonstrate the strip down and cleaning of a Marlin 39M. This particular old weapon belonged to my father, and this is how he taught me to do it. To do this job, we're going to need some gun solvent, some Hoppe's number 9, the classic gun solvent. Love the smell of that stuff. A bore snake, which comes in different diameters or calibers, so you want to get the appropriate bore snake for a 30 caliber weapon. It's a woven nylon tube, and you pull that through the bore, and it has some wire brushes right there that loosens up any metal fines on there, and you pull through. I'll demonstrate that here in a minute. So a bore snake, some Hoppe's number 9, some cleaning cloths, solvent wipes actually, and then a silicone rag, gun and reel rag. Some this is some graphite lube used to lubricate the action, and a small screwdriver. So let's get started. So first thing to do is make sure the weapon is empty. So you can run the action a couple times, nothing in the chamber, nothing in the magazines, we're ready to go. So this gun has a very, very simple teardown and a very simple reassembly, but there's a little trick in the reassembly you need to pay attention to. So in order to pull this apart, we're going to open up the bolt about halfway and going to remove this screw here that's at the lever pivot. The screw right here at the lever pivot comes out, and we're going to put it someplace where we can keep track of it. How about right there? So now the lever is loose, and you see I can remove the lever rather simply. Now I need to remove the bolt, and you see the bolt's about halfway back. I'm just going to hold down the hammer. Do it that way so you can see. Hold down the hammer and move the bolt out of the gun. Like that. Nothing to it. Put that in our safe place. The final item in here is a little tricky to see, but it's the ejection pin. It's inside the receiver, and it's a little spring that serves to eject the empties after they've been fired. And it sits in a little space, and I'm going to show you something here on it. We'll come back to that. But there's a little knob right there that we're going to pay attention to when we reassemble it. But see, there's just a spring that fits in that receiver. So it's in our safe place too. So now we've got the gun empty, and you want to look down the bore to see how dirty it is. Some sort of little flashlight is always a good thing to have here. To do that, I'm going to use this little guy. Let's see if we can see down the bore. So this gun hasn't been fired. I'm just cleaning it out of routine. So you should clean your gun every time you fire it. And if you haven't fired it in about a year, it's good to come back through and clean it anyway, to be sure that all the parts are lubed up and you avoid corrosion and pitting and such like that in the barrel. So the gun is now fully stripped down. We simply need to clean the bore, clean any accessible parts, lube them, and put the gun back together. So a bore snake works like this. It's got a little traveler on the end there. You just simply drop it down the bore and run the cord after it, and you catch it when it comes out the other side. Now there's arguments about which way to do this. I just put it down the muzzle, and I'm getting it out of the action here. But an argument, my dad felt pretty strongly back in the day that it was best to clean a gun from the bore. So I'm going to switch this, reverse it, and I'll put the snake in through the bore of the gun. It's a little trickier to do. Maybe you can see this. Maybe you can't. But I got to get that into the where the bullets go in, and then we'll drop it down as such. And we'll watch the thing come out the bore. I think with these bore snakes, this is Dad's problem with this was more about the old cleaning rods, whereas with a bore snake, I don't think it's as important which way you go from. But in the old days, in Dad's time, we used cleaning rods, which are aluminum rods fit to this, and you would have to shove these patches through there with that rod. And he was concerned about nicking up the muzzle of the gun. So I got my snake through there, and you see it's back here in the back end. And I will always take some of these cloths, wet it down with the hoppies. And put them in advance of the cleaning snake by just poking it into the barrel. And then you drag the snake through. Sometimes it takes a pretty good pull, and this is actually a pretty big bore here. I'm just going to go off camera. I'm going to put this on the ground, pull it through. Let's see if I can catch the end of it. Like so. So you pull the bore out, bore snake through the gun with and then you always look at the patch to see how clean it's come out. It's got a little something or other on it. Shouldn't be any powder or anything. We're going to do this a couple of times to be sure that we've got the gun good and clean. Had this gun been shot, you may find some little bitty splinters of metal on there from the bullet where it gets carved by the rifling. Sometimes you get little slivers of metal, and you want to keep cleaning it until you've gotten all that metal out of there. And you test that by looking at the cleaning patches after you've run them through. Trying to run these through one at a time because this bore snake is pretty big for this particular caliber. I believe this is a 30 caliber through 45 caliber bore snake. That's going through a lot easier. And then you give the barrel another inspection. Nice and bright and shiny now, isn't it? So given that this gun hadn't been shot before and I'm just doing a routine cleaning, I really don't need to do more than that. So I'll take a patch, clean out, just wipe down the receiver, and really here I'm not doing less cleaning than I'm just lubricating. A lot of guns you'll find that the receiver will actually split open. This one's forged into a single piece, but sometimes you can actually take the receiver completely apart. Not the case here. All you can do is get the bolt out. So that's about it. Now we're going to put this gun back together. And I'm going to try to show you a close-up of a couple of features here. Right down there, maybe you can see the little slot right there. That's where that spring ejection pin goes. And that little notch I showed you, bore I showed you, is going to actually fill that hole right there. That locks it into place. So the spring is it's the last thing out. It's going to be the first thing to go back in. And it's going to go into that slot in such a way that it clips in. I'm going to hold that to fill this hole. So you got to position that a little bit. And you should be able to discern it falling into place. It's actually not too bad a one to do in this regard. There. Now it's fit into that hole. So I'm going to set that back down on the flat surface and get ready to put the bolt back in. Now the bolt has a slot on it right there, and the firing pin rides in that slot. So that's how you key this thing to know that it's which way to put the bolt back in. You can see this is the bullet end of the bolt. There's the firing pin right there. And this is the hammer end of the bolt, and that's where the firing pin gets struck by the hammer. And this is going to follow also the cut of the receiver. So this is the right position. So we need to wiggle it back in. You have to kind of hold that hammer down again. And we should be able to slide this thing over the ejection pin. Now it slid on me. I'm just going to adjust this so that the ejection pin stays in that notch and that hole through the receiver. Doesn't move on me. Well, let's see what's going on here with this. Okay. I believe I had it in upside down. I didn't have the tab pointed downwards, so it wasn't finding the hole. Now we point the tab downwards, and this should get a lot easier. Another try, slot down, proper ends. There it goes. So now the ejection pin is in its slot and the bolt is riding past the ejection pin like that. Now you want to push this in pretty far, maybe 3/4 of the way in, but the hammer still needs to be back in order to reinstall the lever. The lever goes in with, imagine your hand going through there and your trigger finger there, so this opening goes towards the trigger. And that goes into place like that. And you should be able to get this thing to click into place after you get the screw reinstalled. Like that. That's good. So we're ready to go. Snug that up. Test the action. This gun is clean. Now got the bore cleaned, final wipe down, and we have cleaned our Marlin 39M. Thanks for watching, and remember to be safe in the woods.